Hello everyone, Kent Bressler here. I want to welcome you to Kent's Kidney Stories. During our time together over these podcasts, I'd like to discuss kidney disease. I'd like to tell you about my journey as a transplant patient, but also talk about dialysis, kidney donation, and just about anything else that might be of interest. Kent's Kidney Stories, podcast endorsed and sponsored by kidneysolutions.org.
Good morning, everyone. This is Kent Bressler coming to you from Kerrville, Texas. Wonderful little Kerrville, Texas, in the center of the heat wave that we're having. Back from my trips, and we're going to do a wonderful podcast today. This is something that I've been looking forward to for about the last month. I think you're going to enjoy it, and if you don't, I'm sorry about that, but I know you will. All right, so we always get started with the prayer, and we're going to do this. This is Holy Week. Remember Easter. You remember He died for us. Dear God, loving others deeply can be both rewarding and challenging. Fill our hearts with the courage to love without fear of rejection or hurt. Help us extend kindness and compassion to all beings, even when it's difficult for us. Grant us the strength to see the good in others and offer forgiveness when needed. Thank you for teaching us the power of love. All these things we ask in your name, dear Lord and Savior. Amen. So we had a really nice, a fun walk Saturday. We had roughly 50 folks come out to walk. The weather was beautiful. And we raised a nice sum of money, which we're grateful for. And that's a wonderful thing. That was our third annual, so it's getting bigger every year, and we hope that we can make it one of our major, beneficial programs, so that we can fund our program at Kidney Solutions. And I also my wife and I came off a week in New York, which was I would just love to tell you all the stories, all the things we got into, but we went there for a NephCure convention. A NephCure Summit. And if you don't know anything about NephCure, I think you should belly up to the bar and get with it. That's nephcure.org. Go to that site, learn all about it, especially if you have a rare disease like we do, FSGS. If you have IgAN, or if you have minimal change, any of those disease processes that are considered nephrotic syndromed, and that I can tell you there is a lot of new stuff coming out, and it's mostly drugs that slow the process of kidney disease down. That's a good thing. We're looking for a cure. I understand that, but guess what? The first step is to slow it. When you can start doing that, and there are drugs on the market, and there's a new one coming out. I can't tell you the name of it because it's still got one of those alphabetical numerical readings, and it's not coming out probably until May into the testing zone, into research. That's nephcure.org. Please take some time and go to that site and look at it. It shows you some pictures of the summit, and also tells you about some of these drugs that are coming out new on the market, and they're going to be, one of them will be used for FSGS. All right, so I just got to slow down here a little bit. I'm so excited. It's like a little kid at Christmas time. I got my first 3 presents in front of me. But I want to welcome this morning a very interesting lady. Her name is Glenna Frey, and she's dedicated over 40 years to nephrology nursing. She's specialized in hemodialysis, peritoneal dialysis, but most in forefront, kidney transplantation. In 2017, she donated a kidney to a total stranger at the Cleveland Clinic. The following year, she co-founded Kidney Donor Conversations, KDC, a nonprofit providing education and support for living kidney donation. And her daughter, Amanda, Glenna serves as executive director of KDC and frequently presents programs on living kidney donation. She's a member of the American Nephrology Nurses Association, National Kidney Donation Organization, and she volunteers with the National Kidney Foundation and other kidney-focused groups. Her connection to kidney disease and transplantation is deeply personal. Many of her relatives, including her husband Bob, have polycystic kidney disease or PKD. Bob has undergone dialysis and is now living with his second kidney transplant from a living donor. Her children, Amanda and Sawyer, also have PKD, but currently maintain normal kidney function, thank God. Glenna is a published author and contributor to several works on kidney donation and nephrology, including The Pursuit of a Better Life, The Ultimate Guide for Finding Living Kidney Donors, Thriving Post-Kidney Transplant, and the Nephrology Nursing Journals. Additionally, she serves as a reviewer for the 4th edition of Contemporary Nephrology Nursing. She is the author of the book that we're going to discuss today, Understanding Living Kidney Donation, the Best Treatment for Kidney Disease. And that's now available on Amazon for you to order. And please do. Glenna also specializes, now get this, holistic therapies, and she holds a black belt in Tae Kwon Do. But most importantly, she's a hula hoop instructor. Now that I can dig because I did the hula hoops. She resides in Northwest Ohio with her husband and enjoys time with her cat and her chocolate lab, as well as crocheting and native plant and gardening. I don't know how she finds the time to do that, but so be it. Glenn's pride and joy are her children, Amanda and Sawyer, and her granddaughter, Zora. Glenna, welcome.
Thank you, Kent, very much. It's just an honor to be here with you. And I've got to ask you a question. I'm sorry. You're also a registered nurse.
Yes, I am.
And I am curious, what type of nursing did you do? What was your background?
You name it, we did it.
Wow.
Yeah, I was an Army medic, and I went back to nursing school, and I spent 40 years in nursing. And then but one of the best things that I enjoyed about my nursing career was the last 3 years when I worked in the palliative care and hospice area. I'd done everything I could, and in my heart I feel that as I've aged, I realized that end of life issues are so darn important that you could spend a whole podcast just talking about that. And it gave me some valuable experience because I have been working with folks that don't want to go on dialysis, all right? They're adamant about not going, and so we hooked them up with palliative care doctors, and it's allowed them some peace and some good living, all right? Quality living. Yep. So, yeah. And I did all the other stuff too, the emergency room, the OR, all that kind of stuff. And I worked dialysis and you name it. But in general, I've been just kind of like, I love my career, but most importantly, I love working with kidney patients, just like you. And now you're smack dab right in the middle of it.
Well, and that's why you're so good at what you do, is bringing all the wealth of your background with you. And that's a lot of what I feel like this book has been, is bringing my experiences from many, many, many years of nursing, in addition to donating, running the nonprofit, and my family having kidney disease. So it kind of is a culmination of all of that, really.
I wanted to read something this morning, Glenna. It's very important, I think, that people understand this book, okay, and they understand you. And I think this sums it all up. So just let me read this. Most living kidney donors write books about their own personal donation process. But this book reveals a broader perspective for donors and recipients, including why a living kidney transplant is best, the ways to donate a kidney, and the stages of living kidney donation. I think that sums up this entire book. I told you I had time to skim it, but I actually read it. All right. And I think everybody needs to read it, whether they want to be a donor or if they're a recipient. All right. Because
Yeah.
it's kind of like a textbook. It reads more like a textbook than a novel. It's not a book. It's a research book. And it's a
Right. It
very
was
important
actually
book.
hard not to make it too technical, too many.
Sure.
My nursing brain wanted it to look different, and I kept saying, no, I want this a little easier to read. I don't want it to be too heavy with, confusing terms. So I hope there's somewhat of a balance in it not being difficult, but yet being a valuable resource.
Well, it is. I think it's a treasure. In all honesty, I'm not patronizing you. I believe it's a treasure. I believe it's something that people should pick up and read, whether they have kidney disease or not. All right? Because, in my travels and in my work in the field, and you've experienced this too, seems like when you happen to pick up a conversation about kidney disease, right? When you start talking to somebody, they automatically say, well, I got an uncle or I got a brother, or I got a friend that has kidney disease. And by golly, it happened to me on the plane home in two different guy sitting next to me ends up having diabetes and he's having trouble with his kidneys.
Well, I think that's a really important piece, that we have so many people in our population that have kidney disease or a chronic illness, a diagnosis that could lead to a kidney failure in the future. And when we look at those people in stage 3 CKD, they often maybe know they have high blood pressure. They know there's something wrong. But for them to think about someday I might need a kidney transplant is so far in the future. And I think that unless we start talking about the importance of all of these issues before people are on dialysis, I mean, that's really who I want to get the message out to, is people who have a little hint of maybe a problem with kidneys, diabetics, but aren't seriously thinking about, oh, I'm going to need, serious treatment someday.
First off, that's exactly true. What you said is exactly true. It's an upfront need. It's not a in the middle or, the emergency room need. It's an upfront need to start early, right? I mean, that's just the case. So what is I know the difference between deceased donation and living donation, but kind of tell me what's the best? What
I'll
is
tell
the
you
best?
what, I think it's confusing to the general population. It's confusing to people who have kidney disease. I think a transplant is how most people think. And there isn't, I don't think, enough discussion about living kidney transplant as the best treatment. So a deceased donor is the transplant waiting list. Everyone knows about that. That's the default. Even if you talk about living donors, somehow they get it mixed up that somehow that has something to do with the transplant waiting list.
Yes.
And it doesn't. When you're talking living donors, I always
totally
tell people,
separate.
separate those. Those are two separate issues. So deceased donor is people who have kidney disease, are on a list, the waiting list, and waiting for someone to die so that their family can donate their organs and that they can then be matched with them. So they're waiting for typically 5 years or more, and that varies. You know this, depending on where you are in the country, depending on your blood type, other issues. So that's the deceased donor waiting list. A living donor transplant, you typically can get faster, especially if you're planning ahead. And that's something we'll talk about
That's
more.
great. That's coming next.
How do you plan ahead? And they last longer than a deceased donor transplant. They usually start working right away. Sometimes there's a delay in a deceased donor kidney working. And again, you can get them much quicker. There are a lot of people that die waiting on the transplant waiting list. So if you have a living donor, because I'm going to give you just a typical, usually within a year, the workups can be done and the surgery scheduled. So it can happen much faster than waiting 5 years or more.
Yeah, and having that over your head the whole time.
And you don't, yes. And you won't, if it lasts longer, so figure a deceased lasts, I like to use round numbers, say 10 years, 10 to 15 years, a living donor transplant usually lasts twice as long, 20 years or so. So you need less kidneys in your lifetime. And that's another topic we really don't talk, to me, I don't think we talk enough about, is even if you have one transplant,
that's not the end.
Are we planning for if you might need a second or a third?
It's not the end.
I mean, my husband's, but we should be talking about that early, not waiting till you're back in kidney failure again.
No, I want to make that point with you. I'm sorry to break you out, but we have to make that point. The nephrology community will tell you, okay, that we're too busy really to see you before stage 4, which is already all the horses are out, cattle and the sheep, and everybody's out of the barn by that time. All right, you're sick as a dog, and you don't know why, and you're confused. And so the importance of living donation is it allows you, when you first start at stage 3, A or B, regardless, when you're in stage 3, you get a leg up. You get your foot in the stirrup and you get up in the saddle and you start riding. You start looking for that living donor. And I think that's the most important part of it is a preemptive shot, right? Don't think dialysis.
Totally.
Yep. So
totally.
Give me your feelings on that. What's the
So here's my frustration. My frustration is usually people don't want to talk about it. And the less people talk about it, the less nephrologists and the transplant community is going to talk to you, right?
Right.
So you have to be really proactive. And I think that's a huge message in my book is if you're talking about it, discussing it, sharing your story, that increases your chances of planning for a living donor transplant. And there's lots of ways that you can share that information because there's lots of ways to donate as a living donor. And that's another aspect that I don't feel like we talk about enough is all the ways a living donor can donate a kidney. And they don't have to wait till someone's in kidney failure on dialysis.
Right.
To do it. Or on the transplant waiting list. We can be planning years in advance to help them get a kidney.
Most of the time, what you'll hear from the community, I'll call it that, is, you know what, we don't want to scare our patients. We don't want to put them at a disadvantage. We want them to be okay with the whole process. Well, to me, and I'll just be honest, I like to know everything up front. I'll make the decision. And I think that's where we really go wrong in not allowing the patient to make some decisions here. They just need to be offered options, opportunities, and then they make the decision. And where that starts, it's not wait until they have, when their kidneys are near failure, right? This is what I'm talking, the stages, there's 5 of them, and we won't go into that. But when you're in the middle, when you're feeling fairly well and your GFR is good, all right, and it's not cascading towards 0, that's when it's early planning, preemptive. Let's get started. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But at least you're prepared, right? That's the most important part. And I think you feel the same way.
Totally agree. I couldn't agree more. It's because we have a system that is so focused on deceased donation, that's where we route people if they're even interested in transplant. We route more people to dialysis directly. Now, do we say, oh yeah, you can get a living donor? Yeah,
Sure,
we
they say it.
check the box at the transplant centers, but what else do we do to help them? We don't have a government system set up like we have for deceased donors to help living donors or people who want a living donor transplant. And I'm not going to go into the history. I know the history. I know why we're here, but I think it's time that we start opening our eyes and calling a living donor transplant the best treatment, and then helping people get the best treatment. I think we're the only disease where we don't encourage the best treatment.
I agree.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah, what's wrong with that picture? Here's a great example. Older fellas in our community that one of my knew real close. His brother lives off. He is 74 and his brother's 72. All right, so his brother needs a kidney, and he comes to me and we talk about it and everything. I said, well, what do you got in your family? Well, I got a brother. He's interested. Well, right away, that's where you start. And within, I think it was 4 months, going through direct care, the guy never saw dialysis. All right. At the age of 74, I ran into him yesterday at the restaurant. He was ecstatic and he looked great. All right. And so, and they said, well, yeah, well, so what? Maybe he'll get 5 years. Well, I'll tell you what, that's not the way to look at it. He has life, and
Yes.
God chooses how long he's going to be here.
Yes.
Not the transplant surgeons, not the nurses, not the community. The person does that, and God is in that whole play. He was joyful. This man had joy de vivre. It was just beyond me how happy he was, and not only, but to see me and say, "You were right. It is great." And I said, "Then speak your word. Tell everybody about it." 74 years old.
If everyone could have that kind of outcome.
Yes.
I mean,
I had it.
Yeah.
I had it.
It can happen, but we still, after 40 years in nephrology nursing, we're not doing any better with preemptive transplant.
We are not. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. Let's put it out there. And the reason you get for it is, well, there's not enough donors. Well, yeah, there's not enough donors. And what's the reason for not enough donors? We know there's no emphasis. There's no major emphasis, regardless government or advertising or, big pharma. They're not talking living donation. They're talking about slowing down the disease process or looking for a cure. I get that. All right. But more living donors out there. There's a whole country full of them, a whole country, right?
That's right. Yes, I did that calculation for a presentation, and really it was through all these presentations I've been doing that kind of made the book what it is today. Yes. I would research something and find something, or I would say, I don't know what that number is. Wouldn't this be interesting to compare? And so that's one of the things I did in the book is I compared our healthy population to the people with chronic disease who couldn't donate, to the people on the transplant waiting list. We have more than enough healthy donors in the United States that could be donating one of their kidneys.
Right. And the only reason they're not, and you know it for me, they don't know about it. They are not educated up, or they have not been given the information that they need to make a conscious decision. If you talk about diabetes, you talk about kidney disease or liver disease, you talk about heart disease, all of these have major components to them that get the word out socially to everyone. All right.
Yeah.
You can
and
do
we
this.
don't make it easy. We ask them if they want to be a deceased donor at death, which less than 1% of the population ever be able to donate. You have to die in a very specific way. You have to be very healthy, and your family has to agree, regardless of whether or not you say yes at the license bureau or wherever you register. We're not doing an equal thing to say, would you be interested in being a living donor? And here's where you can go and get more information.
Exactly. And that's what I'm not saying we're the cure-all here, but Kidney Solutions does that. We're not a donor hunting situation. We're what we are mentors. We work with you to, try to find a donor. We hopefully you can find a living donor. We want to do it preemptively. Then we're there when you have the transplant, but most important, we're there afterwards to work with you to help you keep the kidney. That's the most important part of it.
Yeah. Yes.
But let's go back to this. I call it the early warning system. Once you know you have kidney disease, getting there early, before stage 4, getting there in 3, it allows you, in your book you said, it allows for education, some discussion amongst family members, and it allows for a chance to grieve the process of losing your kidneys. That's something that's you made a very powerful statement in that. The whole book, I picked up on that. You do. No one wants to lose their kidneys, and no one knows very much about kidney disease anyway. Even when you get it, it's a constant effort to trying to figure out what it is, right? But we know in rare kidney disease, it's progressive. And in diabetes, when it's like a comorbidity or I call it an afterthought, it's an addition. I'm telling you, it's very, very difficult to have kidney disease and get much help for it.
Yes. And I think those are the people that have this wonderful opportunity to plan ahead and to share their story. One of the things that I feel that I discovered that I didn't know 10 years ago is what triggers someone to donate typically is hearing a story. And that's actually stage 1 in the book. So exactly. You have to know of someone who has kidney disease or is on the waiting list, or you've heard the story of a donor, or, there's a million ways you can hear the story, or you can, hear someone talking about this weird book. So it's like, it kind of like, it's like, oh, what's that? Or, oh, I didn't know you could donate when you're alive. So there's a little trigger that happens, but they've got to hear that story first. So it's so important for people at stage 3 to be talking about their disease and to say, you know what, I might need a kidney someday. I might need a kidney. And right now, I would like to talk about the best treatment, which is a living donor transplant. And if anyone's curious about learning more about that, I have some information for you. So it's those stories, though, that have to be discussed, or the trigger will never take place for the potential donor.
Well, I can tell you that does not happen. That is not happening. I'll be honest with you. After 20 years, 30 years of working with kidney patients, it's still the same. Not only is treatment pretty much the same for rare kidney disease, but I can tell you that when you're in an office, you got 15 minutes with the doc, there's not going to be, and then you're going to get passed on to a PA or, there is very little education right off the get-go to encourage you to do living donation. Let's prepare you for dialysis, and that's when the conversation stops. Oh yeah, yes. you can you could do a transplant too, by the way. All right.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Now, I'm not saying that's happening everywhere, but the vast majority of the community does not push living donation, and that's the issue. All right.
Agree.
You can take anybody and educate them up, but if you don't encourage them to continue every time you see them, look, have you found a living donor yet? Have you decided? What you're going to do? Have you really thought through this? If not, we have someone we can have you talk to. that
Right.
we want you to do this. All right. Not let's,
Yeah.
by the way, let's get you prepared for dialysis. Let's get you over and have you go through the educational training to get on dialysis. That's not the story.
Right. And how many times have you ever heard a medical person say, "Oh, a living donor transplant's the best treatment"?
Oh, I don't hear it very. No, you don't. We do in our, you and I do when we're talking to, like this with experience. But if you haven't had kidney disease or if you haven't donated, you got no clue. You really don't. If you haven't
No.
lived it, you're at the wrong dance. So
Yeah. I feel like we don't do true informed consent. I think we probably do a better job with people who have cancer. I worked in a cancer center for a while, and I feel like they talk about prognosis a lot more than we do with kidney disease, the options, um, the best treatment.
mhm.
You would never go into a cancer center and not expect the best treatment because that's what they want you to have. But why do we go into a nephrology office and not get talked about the best treatment and encouraged and really assisted and helped to find the best treatment?
Yeah, the best treatment, and I'll say it again, the best treatment is living donation. All right, that's the best
Yeah.
treatment. Because if you look at treatment over time, especially in rare kidney disease, it hasn't changed that much. In 50 years, I've had this thing since 1970, this FSGS. It hasn't changed. Oh,
Yeah.
they've introduced some drugs that, and quite honestly, just don't work. But the standard is still what I took: 60 milligrams of medication, prednisone, steroid, and blood pressure control, ACE and ARBs. So, I
Mhm.
mean, it hasn't changed that much. And
Oh,
then, and I, man, that's 50 years with this disease, right?
yes. Yes.
And so, when we talk about treatment, in all honesty, transplant is a treatment. It's not a cure. But
Right.
there's three, right? You can have a transplant, you can go on dialysis, or you can go on palliative care. If you have end stage renal disease, that's where it's at. We don't want to get there. We don't want to be talking to you about end stage renal disease. We want to be talking to you about, here's the deal. You got to get busy now looking for a
Mhm.
living donor, right?
Mhm.
That's your first priority. And then, and when you've exhausted all of that, which never happens, you can always,
Right.
it never happens that you exhaust your potential for living donation. So that conversation that, oh well, there's just not enough of them around, doesn't run. It doesn't work. It's
No.
not in my world, and it's sure not in yours. And then the other thing is waiting. The word
Yeah.
waiting. I'll bet you took that out of your vocabulary a long time ago, didn't you? Especially
Mhm.
working in the
Yes.
cancer field. And I don't have it. There is no such thing as waiting. It's let's
Yeah.
get with it.
Yes. Agree. And I guess that leads me to think, would it be okay if I talk about the ways to donate a kidney?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, go ahead.
Because, and again, I feel like, I'm always running this line between who's my audience. Is it the potential living donors or is it the recipients? And it's like both because neither of them have the information or understand the information very well. And it's hard to talk about your story and interest in a living donor transplant when you don't understand anything about what that means to be a living donor. So that's why I think this is so important that people with kidney disease have this information also, because then it helps them talk about it or talk about the resources. So we already talked about deceased donation. You're on the list waiting for someone to die. You can do a directed donation, which is, I want to give my kidney to you directly, Ken.
Yep.
And that's what most people do. They go to the transplant center and they're a good enough match to be able to go through with that surgery. And then there's a paired exchange. And in just very simple terms, you and I are not a compatible match. And so where you go into a computer system, a registry, there are other people like us who are not matches. They're in the registry, and they end up doing this, computer magic and finding out that I am matched with someone else and you are matched with another donor. And then all of us, get our surgeries. So
Right.
I give a kidney, you get a kidney.
Yeah.
So that's paired exchange. If you take that to the extreme, it can be a chain when there's multiple people. Mm-hmm. But the interesting thing is those chains typically are started by a non-directed donor.
Yep.
And so I'll talk about non-directed donation. So it's donating to a stranger. And that's what I did. At that point in my life, I did not care who got my kidney. My husband was doing well with his first transplant. I was saving my kidney in case he needed a second transplant, and we could do a paired exchange because we were not compatible. And he looked at me one day and he's like, "You're getting older." And I'm like, "Oh, thank you so much. So are you."
I love you too.
6 months apart, right? He goes, "No," he goes, "I'm really doing well with this kidney." And I was in my late 50s. And he's like, "If you want to donate, maybe you should do it now and not wait." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know I was aging along while I was waiting."
Yeah, you do that every day.
Yeah, right. So I immediately contacted Cleveland Clinic and said, "I want to be a donor. I don't care who gets my kidney. I am healthy. I've been saving this kidney for someone. I just want to give it to help someone prevent or get off dialysis, because that is not a fun life, being on dialysis." So I started the process. So a non-directed donor, you may hear the terms altruistic or Good Samaritan. I call it non-directed because I'm not identifying who that kidney goes to.
Correct.
I don't care. So Cleveland Clinic works with the National Kidney Registry. And if you want, we can talk about registries a little later. And so basically we used that NKR registry to find my recipient. At the same time, while I was going through the workup, they said to me, "Hey, we've got this new program. We wonder if you might be interested in it." An advanced voucher is when a non-directed donor donates a kidney. And this then allows them to receive vouchers for a family or friend. And so in my situation, my husband and my daughter each have a voucher. And in the future, if they go into kidney failure and need a transplant, they turn in the voucher. Only one of them can use it. And they will be matched in the National Kidney Registry for a living donor transplant.
Correct.
So I gave a kidney now to a stranger, and one of them will get a kidney if they need it in the future from another living donor.
Correct. Yep. And that's only in specified hospitals. This does not occur in every transplant hospital. That voucher system doesn't exist. I want everybody to know that. But it is a tremendous program because it allows people to gift. It is what it is. It's a gift of kidney to save a life. Yeah. So let's be honest. That's where it's at.
Yes.
If you're at one of those NKR hospitals, you're going to be afforded this voucher system. If not, then there's some organizations like Methodist in San Antonio who have their own system for paired exchange. All right. But the point is that you can go in and you can, in these NKR hospitals, and get a voucher. It's a pay forward, right?
And there's another, let's just go into the registries.
Yeah, let's go into them.
And then if we need to come back, I can talk more detail about the vouchers. So there are 3 major registries in the United States. And remember, This is not the transplant waiting list for deceased donors. This
Right. We're
is the
talking living donation here.
donor pool where all
Yep.
these pairs of people are at. It's where living donors go to be matched. So the government has one called, it's the OPTN Kidney Paired Donation Pilot Program. They've continued to call it a pilot program for years, and they actually changed the name recently. It used to be UNOS, and now it's OPTN, so I don't know what's happening with their terms.
Yeah, well, they'll get it straight someday.
It's the Kidney Paired Donation Pilot Program, and there are 40 participating transplant centers that are matching. They actually don't have a cost to be part of this paired exchange matching program. They also, because it's a government funded, they don't have any voucher programs. And they don't have any donor protections. So any transplant program can be a part of any one or none or all of these registries. So that's just the first registry is the OPTN.
OPTN, yeah.
The next one I'll talk about is the Alliance for Paired Kidney Donation. And this, let's see, do I have how many? I want to say they have around 60 transplant centers. Theirs is not public, so it's hard. I have to contact them directly to get the number, so it's not as easy to get their numbers.
But it's available. It's out there.
They have 3 voucher programs, and they also have donor protections. The third registry is the National Kidney Registry, which we mentioned, and they have 103 transplant centers that participate. They also have a voucher program and Kidney Protections Donor Shield program. The thing I like about registries, instead of going into a transplant center and just being matched with one person and not really looking at a big pool to match with, is if you have 103 transplant centers and all of them have all these pairs who are incompatible, I don't know how many the number is, but it's more than 2, right?
Right.
And so you have the potential to find the best matched kidney because you have a bigger pool of people to choose from. So why wouldn't a donor and recipient want the best matched kidney that would allow them to keep potentially the kidney longer? So that's part of why a living donor transplant is so, I think, critical, because you can use a large pool of people to choose from to get the best match.
Okay, so
and that to me is the advantage of registries.
That's true. It's just that it's an availability or an access issue. That's the issue, and it's a cost issue. So
registries are not patient facing. Registries aren't really out there advertising what they do. And you have to always go through a transplant center.
Absolutely.
So there's almost this curtain, this veil that you can't see when you go into a transplant center and say, I want to be a donor or I need a kidney. Often, no one will even tell you what registries they participate in. They don't even talk about registries.
I know it's taboo, and I don't get it. And that's a valid point. And I gotta, when you think about this whole process of the registries, all right, and you talk about just an individual going in and saying, I want to donate to my brother, I want to donate to my sister. It's a direct donation. The key here is that is it available, and is it available? It's not available to everyone. That's where we need to be. And I don't think that's going to happen independently, right, with the NKRs and the other registries. So somewhere, and I'll probably get my head chopped off for this, but somewhere there's got to be some type of intervention at the government level that allows this all to happen, all right, without major costs. I'm not asking them to run it, but there's got to be a way of marrying all of this together, because we're confused and it's very difficult for people. It's the disease is difficult enough, but the process of getting transplanted is even much more difficult. All right. So we need to square that up. Now, I think this is a good segue into the idea of what is the issue now? How do we remedy it? Would it not be wise to pay people to give a kidney? They do it elsewhere. What's the issue there?
So, I have two answers for you.
Okay.
The first one is my model of how to kind of fix the system. We already have 55 organ procurement organizations across the country that focus on deceased donor transplants, government funded. That's their job. Why not use a division of the OPOs at each center to focus on living donor transplants to facilitate, getting more donors worked up and to facilitate recipients who need a living donor, help them through that process. So let's use the system we already have in place, but let's maybe adjust some funding so that we do something more than nothing with living donation.
Exactly.
So
make it a major emphasis and focus on it. Period.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's the best treatment. Let's
Yep.
not ignore it.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're totally right.
Yeah.
And it's not a matter of knowing how many people are out there. It's a matter of initiating the fact that the living donation should be at the top of the list.
Yes.
Period. I mean that's what we're advocating for us right now.
Yes.
That's what we're saying. It is the best option.
Okay, so your next question about compensation.
Right, compensation.
So, let me clarify some misconceptions. Usually, when we talk about compensation for living donors, people throw out NELDAC. So, the National Living Donor Assistance Center is great for people that have an extremely low income and they can get reimbursed for their expenses. That is not most of the donors who donate. Now, you could say, well, let's just make the cost neutral for donors so they don't have any out-of-pocket expenses. So I'm kind of have this continuum that I'm thinking of. One is donors get nothing. They get no reimbursement.
Right.
The other thing with NELDAC I would like to point out is the way it's written, because it's based on the the recipient's income.
Right.
The cutoff for if a donor should get money or not. My analysis of that is the implication, which no one talks about, is we expect your recipient to pay you for those expenses. That's why we've set up NELDAC that way. That's why it's based on the recipient income, because if you have good income as a recipient, you should be paying the expenses for your donor. No one talks about that. No one expects that. I'm not sure you should. I'm not saying you should. I'm just saying I think that's what they were thinking when they wrote those initial guidelines for NELDAC.
Yeah. Yep.
But that isn't reality. That isn't happening.
That's based on insurance too. A lot of it has to do with insurance, and a lot of people don't have that extended warranty, so to speak. They don't have that extra insurance. Doesn't exist.
So donors aren't reimbursed for expenses. I paid over, but yet we have to pay to donate our kidney. We don't talk about that either.
Yes, say that again. We have to pay to donate a kidney.
Pay out-of-pocket expenses to donate our kidney. Now, I don't want your audience to get confused. We do have, there's no cost for our workup or surgery. Okay, don't confuse that issue. These are two different issues. The recipient insurance pays for the donor workup and surgery. Period. These are out-of-pocket expenses I'm talking about for traveling, for taking time off work. Some people don't have
wages.
Have lost wages. So there's multiple ways we pay to donate our kidney because of all of these issues. You have to have a caregiver with you for surgery. So they have to take off work and travel. So there's lots of issues related to the expenses occurred by donors. So you could say, oh, let's just reimburse you for everything. And so you don't have any out-of-pocket expenses, cost neutral. Well, we're not doing that.
No.
Okay. But that would be nice.
Yeah.
I'm not going to argue with that. That'd be nice. So now we can go on the continuum another step. Well, before we go to the next step, I'm going to go way out on the end and say we can sell organs. Well, we know we're not going to do that. No one's ever going to support that.
No way.
So we're never going to sell organs.
No way.
Let's just take that off the list.
Yep.
But what we could do, and the proposal that I think makes the most sense that I see right now, is a pilot project that a non-directed donor would donate a kidney and they would get a tax credit after the donation. And I think when people talk about this exchange of money, they're thinking, they use the words selling the kidney or
that's wrong.
Compensating. Yeah. And it's like, that's not what this tax credit is. The End Kidney Deaths Act pays them over 10 years as a compensation for donating. We have a really, really good system set up that screens potential donors for their health, mental health, social, psych. That's what the transplant programs are set up to do. This is the most regulated surgery there is, living donor transplants. Compensating with a tax credit has nothing to do with changing the screening process or the way we donate kidneys. And I think people get really tangled up in all of these issues because it's very emotional. People get wrapped up because it's, ethical issues can come up because of, they think people can be exploited. I'm like, I don't understand that because the screening process doesn't change and the compensation is later. And it's not me going to you saying, I'm going to give you money for my kidney. Give me money for my kidney. Yeah. Like, I feel like all of those arguments are just words. Fluff. And people being fearful, people guessing. We don't know. We've never done this. We have no evidence to prove this is a good idea or a bad idea.
Right.
And that's why doing a pilot program on a very tiny, tiny population, non-directed donors, is like, there's very little risk. I think there's such a little risk involved in trying it and see, and then evaluate it.
Well, everything that you do when you advocate, every bill that goes through, every bill that gets passed, every bill that's functional, workable, changes. Right? Yeah. Once it goes into law, it always can be changed.
Yes.
Right? It's a matter of getting it there. If you don't try, you don't have any success or failure. You don't know.
Right. And why are we okay with people dying and not trying something new and different?
Well, I'm telling you, you talk to the people that we talk to, people with kidney disease, whatever it is it takes to get a transplant, they're willing to do. All right, and as long as it has some type of regulation, and there's not a passage of money, a check to a person for a kidney, what have you got to lose? And
guess what? We're going to save taxpayers money. Right. The irony of all of this discussion is it's not just that a living kidney transplant is the best treatment. Part of why it's the best treatment is it's the most economical treatment.
Exactly.
Also, it's less expensive than dialysis. It's less expensive than deceased donor transplants. We can do the workup and be done and transplanted in a much shorter time period than managing a whole system of deceased donor waiting lists.
That is the absolute truth. Why are we managing something so big that it's impossible to manage? And we have a simple solution that really begs for more action. Living donation does. Don't talk about the negatives of there. Tell me a negative for living donation. I can't think of any negatives. I mean, really.
I mean, we've had, very few donors that have had some, I guess, side effects after surgery. There's a very tiny, tiny number that have ended up on end-stage kidney disease later and have needed
but they're well
treatment.
taken care of. They go to the top of the list. Yeah.
So, but it is discussed as part of the workup. We go in knowing there is risk involved.
There's risk
Just
in everything.
Like
yep.
We go drive our car.
Yep.
And
or get on a bus or on the subway.
Risk
yep.
of death.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I talk about the risk of death in the book also.
Yep.
So we do occur risk every day, and it is a risk, but it's so tiny. When you compare it to all these other risks we have in our lives, it's minuscule.
Okay. So if you, as a person who wants to donate your kidney, you've figured that all out. You've really gone through all of that process. It's your decision. And if you're healthy enough to give a kidney, then you ought to be allowed to do that. And if there's a mechanism that allows you some compensation for expenses, what's the deal? In all honesty, that's a simple part of it. Does not have to be so convoluted that everything's, let's not try it because we've never done it. I mean, let's try it so maybe some people will really live for this. We can save a lot of lives doing this. All right.
Yeah.
Living donation.
The outcome, the reward.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
I mean, most living donors say they would do it again. They don't have regrets. I wish I had more kidneys to give. I would donate as many kidneys as I could. It was that rewarding for me. It was that, and I'm sure it was easier for me in some ways being a nurse.
Knowledge.
And familiar with the system.
Yep.
I'm not going to disregard that. But most donors I know are very giving people that would donate again if they could. Yeah.
Would you consider coming back again?
Absolutely.
I think we focused right now on living donation, which we should have done, which we anticipated doing, and which I think we accomplished. It's not convoluted. This conversation is just one simple thing. Living donation works, all right? But it doesn't get the approval rating or the satisfaction label. It doesn't get the emphasis that it needs. And that's what we're asking for here. Is that correct? That's pretty much in a nutshell what we're talking about here?
Yes.
There's all kinds of alternatives, all kinds of ways to do things. But living donation is the best way to go.
Yes. And that was why I carefully chose the title of my book, because it is the best treatment, but it's the least discussed. Again, it's all backwards.
It is. It's convoluted and backwards. Understanding living kidney donation, the best treatment for kidney disease. There couldn't be a better title. I'm going to read it again. I'm going to keep reading. I'm going to encourage people to go get this book. All right, if you've listened to this podcast and you don't share it with people, I mean, good gracious, it's going to continue to allow us not to progress. We don't have any new ways of doing things, but we have an opportunity to do things newly right here with this living kidney donation. I'm a benefactor of it. I'll be out 38 years in end of this month. All right. I have FSGS, a rare kidney disease. All right. You can pretty much say, in all honesty, I'm blessed. But I can tell you one thing. There are a lot of people out there right now dying every single day, right? Every single day. There's numbers from 13 to 60 a day. You can, but let's just say you could save a life just by finding out what it means to give a kidney. It can happen. You got two, you can give one up and you'll do fine. Call my brother, he'll tell you. He's out 38 years giving me a kidney, right? And all the things that go into this are explained in this book. Donation is it's easy peasy, all right? It's just a matter of you making the decision to do it. And you can call us at Kidney Solutions, kidneysolutions.org. You want to get in contact with Glenna, we can do that. Just give us a call. All right. Get on the website, see what we can do, and give us a chance to tell you about living donation. We have qualified people that we can have you talk to. So I just think, Glenna, that right now we've done a good service here. I really believe that, and we're neither one of us will take this to our grave. This importance of, I don't care how we get there, but living donation needs to be at the top of the list. It's the best treatment, period, that we have, bar none. All right. Yeah, some people won't be able to get a living donor. We understand that, but why not give them the opportunity to learn about it up front, early on? They make the decision. Let's not let a community of doctors or, scientists dictate to us as patients what we can do, especially to donors, potential donors. We ought to be harvesting them, working really hard to bring in the attention nationally that living donation is possible and we can maybe fund it. All right, let's get with it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you tell me if there's anything else you'd like to say, because you're coming back. I got to figure out a way to drag you in here. Maybe we'll do a specific title out of the book. I love this book. All right, and I think it's something that everybody needs to read. I'll just say it again, and that's it. So,
well, I think that if anyone's interested in living kidney donation, that they should consider a non-directed voucher donation and get vouchers for family and friends who have kidney disease or potential kidney disease. We could go a little deeper into vouchers, which we didn't get into detail today. But I think there are opportunities that people just don't know about. And if people knew they had kidney disease, they could talk to family and friends about the voucher option. And you could get multiple vouchers as someone with kidney disease.
We can point.
So
We can point them in that direction for for hospitals that do that. Okay. I mean, you just don't have to go down to your local hospital that has a transplant program. There's like you say, the registries I think are the most important thing in the whole book right now. NephCure has one for kidney disease, and NKF is working on a big registry for CKD, for chronic kidney disease. So registries mean knowledge. The more people you got in the pool, the better chance you have of matching. Okay. Enough said, but maybe that's that topic we need to go back into. All right.
Well, and we didn't talk about uplet matching, so that's another thing that we could discuss is the high resolution HLA matching with uplets.
Right. That is one thing I think we should do. I believe that's what we will do, is come back and take a look at how people get matched, because there's a lot of myth about you're not, just because you're O positive and A positive. Right. I mean, that's we don't encourage our folks when they advertise for a kidney, when they search for a kidney, to put their blood type on. Because
No.
a person who reads it and says, "Well, I'm not O positive. I'm not going to register. I'm not going to go back in and get tested."
Same.
It's boom. You don't do it.
I don't even talk about it. I don't talk
either.
about it as the matching issue for you. You don't
Yeah.
need to worry about that. That is
No.
not yours.
No,
Yeah.
but people need to understand that. So
Yeah.
I think that's what we'll do. We'll have you
Okay.
back.
Cool.
And that's why you
Cool.
make the big bucks here at Kidney Solutions.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay.
You
Okay,
take
folks.
care.
Yep.
Have a good rest of your day.
The same to you. Okay, folks, listen, kidneysolutions.org. We're a full service, free 501c that helps people with CKD, looking for kidneys, kidney donors, and liver donors. We have support groups. Just go to kidneysolutions.org and sign up for our support group. We do these podcasts. There's over 150 of them now that you can draw from if you have kidney disease. And just like us, when you go in there and subscribe to us and spread the word, send it out. This is a very good avenue for us to talk about kidney disease. So, as I always say, keep breathing.